Cool. I don't have a huge agenda. I'm sure you guys have some questions. I'll try and answer the ones that I think will be relevant. I know I've had a lot of questions about Corey and Kareem since our last game. I think they, like a lot of players in our team, are competitive. Don't like maybe the recent string of defeats that we've had, and coupled with maybe their playing time, can get a little emotional at times. Nothing at this point necessarily to officially report on, but I think in the coming days there may be something more official with regards to Kareem and his status with the team. But right now, those are still things I'm working through with those guys. Corey, at this point, I don't really see anything serious. I know his name's been kind of brought up quite a bit. Kareem will just be something that we discuss probably more officially here as more time kind of progresses from our last trip. Health-wise, everybody else is okay. I know Carlton had a little bit of an injury at Colorado State that still kind of bugged him a little bit, but nothing serious from that as far as long-term stuff goes. And other than that, just kind of little bumps and bruises around the way there. At this point, our sole focus is Wyoming, just focusing on this upcoming game and trying to make sure that we do everything we can to give ourselves the best chance of victory. Obviously, from Colorado State to San Diego State was a really tight turnaround, and had a little bit of time there, but flew home Saturday night, had Sunday, and then flew back out Monday. Just was kind of a little tight. This is good to kind of have some days here that we can really prepare and hopefully practice for our upcoming opponent. And we're looking forward to that, getting back out on the court and continuing to kind of work with this team. I know a lot has maybe been said about where our expectations were initially and maybe where we're at now, and inevitable disappointment that might come with that, which is probably a real emotion and response to kind of how things are going. But there's still a lot of basketball left to be played. I think there's still a lot of pieces here to work with, and it's my job and it's our job to try and just do everything we can to continue to stay at that and bring everything we can out of this team. So that's kind of where it's at.
Coach, how would you describe the overall challenge that your entire team, personally, that you face right now?
That's a bit of I wish I had a simple answer to that. I think me, like everybody, is very outcome driven. And as a coach, I've tried to be the opposite of that. I've tried to be process driven and constantly try and work on our culture and the way we play and the way we act and all the things that we do that will eventually lead to the outcomes we want. The score will take care of itself, so to speak. Unfortunately, as these outcomes have piled up against the way we would want, it's probably forced me and even some of our guys to take our eye off of that and become very outcome driven. And, a loss means something different than a win. And that's something that I've probably slipped up on a little bit this year because I expected, and I think we all expected, maybe some different outcomes. And I think really all I've tried to do over the past probably week or so, as I've kind of talked to just coaches in the profession or people that I respect or want to hear what they think about where we're at, is about me just trying to keep this as process-oriented as I possibly can, continue to emphasize the things that are important to me, and then allow the score, the winning, whatever it happens to be, to hopefully come from that.
Coach, this isn't directed at any one player specifically, but each one of these guys comes here pretty highly recruited.
Yep.
And they come here with the expectation to play quite a bit. And I know you want to have depth, but
yeah,
how hard is it to keep a roster of 12, 13, 14 guys happy when you can't give equal opportunity to everybody?
Yeah, I think that is probably something that every college coach deals with at every program in the country, particularly over the last, I'm going to ballpark and say 2 to 4 years, as players themselves start to gain more probably independence, gain more power in the coach-player intercollegiate basketball relationship. and have more autonomy to kind of do what they want. And that's probably a good thing, to be honest with you. I think over the history of college basketball, there's probably been many players that were mistreated or treated in certain ways and were either too scared to leave or weren't allowed to leave, or things that can maybe perpetuated worse behavior, where now they do have some options. Does that mean maybe things have gotten carried away and some kids might look to leave a little prematurely at things? Of course. But I think that's better than maybe the former, as far as maybe things that were going on in this industry that I don't think anybody was really happy about. So I think part of that goes with the territory. There's kids transferring from great programs. There's kids transferring from poorer programs. I don't know if it necessarily has to do with as much winning and losing as it does just the individual nature of the person involved and what they want to get out of the experience. And most kids want to play, and they want to play a lot, and they want to have a meaningful impact on the team that they're playing on. So kind of when you recruit guys and they all want to play, like you said, there's going to be some that aren't unfortunately going to find themselves in that mix. If it's perpetual and it's consistent and it's ongoing and they feel it's time to move on, sometimes that's mutual, and usually that's mutual. There are times it's not. I mean, there was a young man that left our program last year, and I didn't want him to. You know what I mean? There was a young man that left our program earlier this year, and I didn't want him to. You know, there are times I might agree and say, you're right, your role isn't great. I don't know what the future holds for it. So-and-so's coming in, or so-and-so's ahead of you and he's younger, or whatever those conversations may be. But there's other times like, man, I don't see it that way. I think you're close. I think you can do this if you just kind of keep working. And there are times, you know, they'll listen to that, and unfortunately times we've had where they haven't. So it's just a new part of this. And like I said, I think overall for the betterment of the whole game, I think it's a good thing. But I think in the interim, we all have to get used to just a lot of turnover every year with regards to rosters and players.
Do you have any players that have requested being put in the transfer portal? And is any of the news related to Kareem possibly going to affect you guys trying to get a mid-year transfer if a scholarship opens up?
No one's requested to be in the transfer portal. I do think Kareem Corey's been kind of brought into this a little bit because of, you know, some body language things that he did, which has been an issue for him this year, and things we continue to talk and teach and hope that he'll kind of grow from. But I don't think anything with Corey is overly significant at this point for me to continue to kind of talk about. But Kareem, obviously, there was a situation, and we're continuing to talk. We spoke a little bit yesterday in the airport. We spoke a little bit again today, and we're going to kind of continue to work through that. And once I have kind of a final resolution is when I'll release something. I don't want to necessarily prematurely say stuff about that.
With the scholarship, then, are you guys looking at mid-year transfers?
We are. We have. We
classes started this week, so
yeah.
it has to be now.
Yeah. No, we have. We have one that has been admitted into UNM. I don't think he's been enrolled, so I don't know how that dictates whether I can comment on him or not, but I know we got him admitted into school yesterday, I believe. And then we're working on kind of the next step of that. You know, no different than when we were looking at Carleton last year.
As a non-scholarship, though.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we don't necessarily have one, and guys leaving midway through, you can at times give them back, but there's kind of some different parts that go into that as well.
Just so I'm clear on that, so if one of these guys this year decides to transfer, they can give you the scholarship?
Yeah, the NCAA changed the rule either this fall or last fall, where it used to be if a kid left at some point during the year, you were done for the year. You could never use that scholarship again. And they changed the rule either last fall or this fall, where under certain circumstances, if a kid left, you could use that scholarship and give to someone else. So you can kind of see some different things going around of maybe some walk-ons getting scholarships or whatever. You know, teams are just kind of reallocating them. But there is a little bit of criteria that has to be met in order for that to kind of take place.
It sounds like looking ahead that Kareem could be a possibility for something like that. Do you see him playing against Wyoming on Saturday?
At this point, no. But again, I until I have like a final resolution to that, I don't really want to talk too much about it, just because he's involved in this decision as well.
Let me ask you a little philosophy
Yep.
question on the zone. Those 3 threes, now
I thought they did beat us.
Well, indicative of what happened to you in the second half.
Yeah.
I'm seeing guys guard guys who don't have the ball 30 feet away from the basket,
Yeah.
which opens up the middle, which then kicks to the corner. Is that the philosophy, to pressure out of that zone, or are we trying to pack it in here and guys are just out of position?
Yeah, no, I mean, in the San Diego State game, we were doing some different things. We were trapping. We were trying to prevent them from getting into a rhythm. I thought for the first 39 and a half minutes, it was a shot chart I would have accepted. I thought it wasn't perfect by any means, but I thought for 39 and a half minutes, we were kind of where we needed to be. The shots that they took, I was still okay with. They were 2-point jumpers. We kept them off the 3-point line. I thought San Diego State did a tremendous job on the offensive glass, getting a lot of easy ones around the rim, which unfortunately kind of comes a little bit with the territory. But I thought for opening minutes of the second half, we did not do that. We didn't protect the 3-point line. And I thought those 3 threes in the first 3 minutes of the second half were huge, coupled with the last possession of the first half. I thought that little 3.5-minute segment, unfortunately, swung the game in a way that we just couldn't get the momentum back in any way from there.
You talked about outcome, and I mean, Kareem, and obviously Kareem, but I mean, just as a whole team, you kind of struggling to keep this team motivated. I mean, you saw in the second half, is it like,
yeah.
Do you see the same vibe in this team?
The most disappointing stat to me, and everyone, there's a lot of opinions on low ball basketball, and I think that's awesome. Whether we play man, whether we play zone, whether this guy plays, that guy plays, this person's a point guard, that person's a point guard. I can go down the line of the different strata of things we all discuss. But at the end of the day, our last 3 games were our 3 lowest deflection games of the year. And that's the one I care about. We went 31, 31, and 32. And we had 42 against Nevada, and that to me is more of an indicator of our team, what we're trying to do, how hard we're playing, how competitive we are, how into the game we are. And these last 3 games can be chalked up to a myriad of things and a myriad of coaching things as well. But to me, that's still something that defines the team I want us to be, the team we've been before, and the team I'd like to be, is how hard we're really playing and the competitiveness, the edge, and the fire that I want. And I've got to find a way to get that out of the guys. And maybe the zone doesn't bring enough of that about. And that's more of a legitimate question to me than some of the other things. So to me, I've got to find a way to get us playing and getting on the floor, loose balls, charges, hands-on balls, feet-on balls, the kinds of things that we did against Nevada, even though we were playing zone, even though we were playing Anthony Mathis a point guard, even though some really great questions that are questions we ask all the time, to me, we've got to find a way to get that edge, that fire back.
Paul, from the outside, everyone's just going to be like, it's just defense, and why is this hard to execute? But when you change something mid-season for the player, the adjustments, what kind of challenges do they have going from the press to, oh, no, I have these responsibilities in half-court?
Yeah, as weird as it sounds, and nobody's watching us probably believes it, our field goal percentage defense is better than last year. Our 3-point percentage defense is better than last year. We're doing some things defensively actually better than last year. What we're not doing better than last year is we're turning over the ball at an enormous rate. It is by far our worst statistic, and it is creating a lot of offensive momentum for the other team. Last year's team was terrific at taking care of the basketball. We were a top 70 team in the country for a team that played really fast that still managed to have good ball control. And this year's team so far, you're going 17 turnovers a night for 20-plus points at the other end, and it's just giving these other teams great rhythm. So when you get into man, you get into zone, or whatever you want to get into, those guys are just in a very good flow, where last year's team, believe it or not, we never gave you those easy opportunities. We might not have been a great defensive team. Like I said, field goal percentage-wise, last year's team was worse than this year's team, but you never got in a rhythm against us, where I think this year, whether we were man or zone, you can just see teams just seem to be in a good rhythm, and we haven't been able to bump them off that. And I think a lot of that has to do with our ability to take care of the basketball, and that's part of the reason we even went to zone, was thinking about offense. Maybe slowing it down would help. Maybe getting different players on the court would help. And we're going to kind of keep chipping away, and hopefully at some point we can find a effective solution to not turning the ball over with the steal rate that we are right now.
Well, a lot of teams have that one guy who can be a go-to guy, not only lead vocally, but the guy that you can get the ball inside the paint when you have a must-score situation.
Yep.
The point guard that can slash and take it in, the big man that can just push. You guys really don't seem to have that. Does that seem to be the biggest?
The one thing I'll say, and this might be an indictment on me, but like I think we have that. We just haven't shown the ability to effectively do that, you know. And I think unfortunately, you know, first play of the second half, we run a play. It's for Carlton Bragg to get the ball, and it's a layup for Carlton Bragg. We run the same play the next possession. And, you know, he decides he wants to drive and do something kind of creatively on his own, and we pick up a charge. We go back to it thinking, okay, you know what, Carlton, like, let's just be patient and get it to you. And then, unfortunately, another guy kind of screws up the play. So it's like, you know, and that's me as far as, like, I've got to find the most effective way to get those things to happen more. We're trying. We're practicing. We're doing different things in practice and obviously in games, whether it's playing more bigs or playing more guards or doing this or doing that. And we're trying to find a way to effectively get that offensive efficiency up, but I've yet to find that yet. So that's something that I've got to continue to work on. We've got to continue to work on. And anything that'll cut down on our turnovers, I'm open for. So it's a question I ask everybody every day on our staff. We've got to continue to tinker with this thing to get better ball control, because you can't come out of halves and execute like that.
As far as the deflections, staff.
Yep.
How close have you come to go, you know what, screw this. We're going to play the way I want to play. We're going to full court press. We're going to shoot three. We're going to play fast. We're going to speed you up. How fast have you? How close?
Yeah, the issue was, I think, like last year, it defensively, like I said, defensively, you could have made the argument that last year, I don't know if that worked or not. How great. But half the reason we were doing it was for offense. We wanted the game sped up. We thought we had a lot of guys that could shoot and move the ball. And what made us so good at that pace is we were able to take care of the basketball. The issue with us right now is it's not just a defensive question, it's also an offensive question. And we're trying to find the right rhythm to this team where they both kind of come together and we look like a very effective functioning style of play. And part of the reason we started to move to a zone was we thought maybe it would help with the turnovers. The problem is it hasn't. So now we've got to continue to manipulate this thing in whatever ways we can, where we can find an effective way to play defense, but also a way to give us a better chance to play good offense as well.
But you're not, and you're not turning over the opponent and getting easy baskets other than Nevada, which is over here. The last, you know, I mean.
Well, Air Force, I thought we did too. I thought the first, Air Force and Nevada, and again, I think it might have had more to do with their personnel as opposed to us. I think they were bigger, smaller, athletic, guard-oriented teams. And now when you run into some of those guys, unfortunately, we can't duplicate those guys in practice. I can't find a 6'1" jet and put them out there and say, guys, let's go. We can watch film on it. We can practice it, but we don't have the ability to kind of put a guy out there. Last year, it was issues with like really athletic one-on-one wings. We had struggle with James. We had struggle with Loft and like all those guys. And we show film on it and we practice it. But when you went out there and saw Trey Kell, there's only so much that guy can do. So it's the same thing right now, unfortunately, with these guards. Like, we can show the film on how they beat us. We can talk about it. We can practice it. But until you're out there against that kind of guard, if we had Antono Jackson, okay, let's all go guard Antono for the next 2 hours. But I think that's unfortunately kind of really crept up on us. Whether we're man, whether we're zone, whether we're whatever we're trying to do defensively, that's just kind of become an issue for us.
Yeah, just along those same lines as far as the turnovers go on the other end. In what the guys have been able to do in scoring off of turnovers, what have you seen so far, what you like, what you don't like, in what they've been doing scoring off of turnovers in transition?
Our defense you're talking about, or the other teams?
On defense, turning defense into offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously our turnover percentage actually has been much better in the zone than I ever thought. Particularly against Nevada. Nevada does not turn the ball over, and we were really able to get some turnovers in that game that I thought were huge for us. I think when we first went to the deflection to the zone, we were even a little nervous. What's this going to mean for deflections? And we had 39 against Air Force, and we had 42 against Nevada. So those are two of our higher totals for the year, and we're thinking, hey, we can continue to do this. We turned over two great teams. Unfortunately, now we've run into some teams where we haven't, and our deflections have just dropped drastically, and we've had a lot of issues doing that, which was the issue we had previously before we even went to the zone. So that's a challenge. That's something we got to continue to work on, finding creative defensive ways to not only be more efficient, but to create some stuff for our offense as well.
Two. One is just sort of philosophically why you haven't shown a whole lot. I know you've shown some, but of just mixing defenses from possession to possession, not just out of a timeout or something. But why aren't you mixing a man to a zone on any sort of regular basis?
Yeah, I think for us, practice time's been an issue. We've spent so much time trying to just get caught up in the zone when we went to it. Quite honestly, we weren't spending really any time on our man-to-man, and going into those first few games, we hadn't even covered what a team was going to do against man-to-man. So I think going into Colorado State, we did a little bit of it. We looked at our numbers afterwards, and unfortunately, the same problems that we used to have in man crept up again, as far as just smaller guards going right at us and driving us and getting us to the rim. And when we looked at all of that, we just felt going into the San Diego State game with 48 hours, what are we going to do? Let's just focus on what they're going to run against zone and hopefully give ourselves the best chance to win. I think a little bit of practice time goes into that, a little bit of trying to evaluate as many different things as you can goes into that, but that doesn't necessarily prevent that being more of an option going forward.
Talked a lot about the defensive decisions being about those small guards. James isn't that. James is their primary weapon and did pretty good against you guys last year when you were having problems against wings.
Yeah, no question.
What do you see in James this year, and what do you see in Wyoming?
I'm watching the Utah State game this morning, last night. I'm watching the Utah State game. I mean, they're up 6 with 3 minutes to go in the half, had the game playing exactly how they wanted to play. Utah State got hot, made some threes. Wyoming, had a couple calls maybe go either way on them, and next thing you know, they're kind of down. They beat South Carolina. They were up at UNLV for a decent part of the game. They're capable when they get the game played how they want. They're very deliberate. They know it's going to go through James. Thompson's having a great year. He can shoot the ball. So they're capable, and obviously they haven't won. So I think at this point of the year, those teams are still going to be fighting and grinding and trying to come out with a win, and we're kind of in the same boat. So I think it's two teams with hopefully on our end anyways, just a lot to go out and fight for right now.
Going to the point guard, just how do you like the progression of Drew and Keith at this point?
I part of the reason I hate the topic is because I think when you say something about the direction you go, it's almost like an indictment on the other person. I'm going to make Jalen Hurts my quarterback instead of this guy, and it's like it's personal, and it's really not. We try and make the best decision we can with the information we have. I think Drew and Keith are tremendous young talents. That's why we brought them here. The problem is right now on our roster, they're the 2 highest turnover rate guys we have. And for me, looking at everything, you're trying to do the best you can for the overall team. And what's going to get us there is the popular decision to do something different because we'd lost some games and Anthony becomes an easy target. Maybe it is. But did I genuinely think that would give us the best chance to win this game? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that. So I think at this point, we're going to kind of continue to work with all of them in a way. We're going to continue to play Keith and Drew. We're going to continue to allow Anthony to kind of play both spots. And at some point, if the data or just the consensus around us is this is the obvious way to go, then we'll go that obvious way. The way the season started at the beginning and the way things unfolded, we felt the obvious way to go was let's just play Anthony and let's figure it out and let these young guys kind of come along. As it's evolved, I think it's gotten to the point where it behooves us to look at all these options, and then hopefully the right answer will reveal itself. Unfortunately, I can't predict the right one right now. I'm just not that smart.
So this question has nothing to do with the personality, so you don't have to identify.
Yeah.
But I'm asking more philosophically. Obviously, when you have Anthony at the point, you allow yourselves to have a bigger team on the court, which would normally be an advantage. But once he makes the entry pass, isn't your offense such that there's really not any premeditated place for a point guard to stay, and he could benefit to some degree like he would normally be as if he was playing a wing or a two guard.
Yeah, theoretically, you're exactly right. The issue I think anybody that watches us see, they're just really pressuring all those guys, and they're pressuring our perimeter players to put the ball on the floor and make decisions and make decisions under pressure. And unfortunately, it's not just if you look at our turnover numbers, it's just not one or two guys. It's pretty spread. The rates aren't great for the point guards, which is a problem, but it's not just them. It's not like it's just the point guards turning it over and everyone else is great. We're just turning it over collectively right now at a pretty high rate, and that doesn't necessarily matter who's at the point if you're going to get turnovers from this position and this position and this position. If the 3, the 4, and the 5 are all turning the ball over as well, it causes, I guess, questions about further than that, just anything you're trying to do offensively and moving the ball around.
Coach, what is your bread and butter defense today?
That is a great question, Henry. I think we obviously went a certain way to start the season. 11 games in, I felt like we needed to make an adjustment for a lot of reasons. We've made that adjustment, and now I'm going to say 5 or 6 into this, and that's something that we're working on. That's something that we're going to continue to practice on. That's something we're going to continue to tinker with, just like our offense. I had a lot of well-designed plans for this season schematically on both sides of the ball, and they have not gone the way I initially intended for reasons within and without of my control. It's my job now to continue to work on that, but as I kind of said earlier, I don't want to become too driven by that, because I think by doing that, we've lost a lot of our processes to get us effective in the first place. Because I think last year, you come up with a lot of questions about our style of play as well, or things that we did. But I thought our overall culture, our persistence, our passion, our competitiveness drove us through a lot of things. And like I tell the guys all the time, if you're not going to play hard, it doesn't matter what we get into. We've got to find a way to compete, get our deflection numbers up, and play with a passion and enthusiasm that when we played Nevada, it happened to be zone, but it was a passion and enthusiasm in the game that made the zone look good. And if it happens to be man or zone or whatever it is, we have to find a way to create that energy about us in order for that to reveal itself properly.
You might play either or a little of each.
Yeah, I think, look, I am not necessarily married to anything for my own accord. I'm trying to look into it going, what can we do to win? And preparation time goes into it, who you're playing goes into it, their roster. I mean, a myriad of things kind of go into it, and that'll dictate what we end up doing defensively. So on Saturday, we're in the midst of, and we're going to practice stuff today. We're going to put together the best defensive package we can that we think will help us win on Saturday.
Coach, if you win on Saturday, you're 3-3 through 6 games, exactly where you were last year at this time. Is this one of those things where we as a group need to chill out and let this thing play itself out?
I mean, that's what you would like to say potentially, but in all honesty, that's really not. Like, a lot of those things I think took care of themselves because we were doing a lot of the right things. Unfortunately, I had to do a lot of ugly things to get us there with suspensions and this and that, but we were doing a lot of right things underneath the hood that didn't percolate till 7, 8, 10 games to go. And that's where I think if I've done anything that I'm looking back on as a head coach on this season, I haven't stuck enough on that. I've been too bogged down thinking we didn't win because I didn't call this play or this guy didn't get that. And last year I didn't think about that. I thought about building a program, creating a culture, instilling the right values, and letting a lot of those things take care of themselves. They revealed themselves in the Nevada game, but I don't think that had a lot to do with me. I think that had more to do with the magnitude of the game and the seriousness with which a lot the things unfolded. They happened to embody the things I wanted to embody, but I don't know if that was necessarily this great groundswell that I created. And I've got to do a better job of creating that. And that's me. That's not anybody else. I've done some things this year. I've behaved some ways this year that I'm not fond of, I'm not proud of. And that was because I was going down this same road of being so outcome driven as opposed to just building and creating and developing a culture and a group that I'm proud of and that I want to be a part of, and let those things kind of take care of themselves. And hopefully that's something that we've started. I know it hasn't shown up yet, but that's how I want to coach this team, and that's where I want this team to go.
Last one.
You said something after the game against San Diego State. Maybe it's because their front court was a little bit different than any of the others we might have seen. You talked about their athleticism, their height, their length, their speed, all of that. Our team is pretty big, heavy, and we think we have some good bigs.
Sure.
Was it a little bit of a shock to their system? And do you think if we face a team like that down the road against San Diego State or others, that they'll be better prepared to deal with the length and the across-the-board athleticism of the front court?
Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously played smaller in the game, so I think that had a little bit to do with it. We're trying to get a little bit more rhythm to ourselves. So we played a much smaller lineup and tried to spread the floor a little bit and do some things to kind of hopefully give us a little bit more energy. And I think that hurt us a little, obviously, on the glass. San Diego State has obviously played that bigger lineup at times, but against Air Force and our teams, they played a much, much smaller lineups, so that when they got success early with that big lineup, I think it just furthered their willingness to continue to play bigger lineups, and they got us down there. I think for sure Mensah was terrific and McDaniels on the glass. Those two they were playing volleyball up there, and we've got to find a way to be more physical and play tougher around the rim, and that's definitely part of today's film session and part of today's practice.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.